comment a little bit. We voted on electoral college last week, not this week. It was last week, wasn't it? We did electoral college. Time flies when you're having fun. But I spoke against that in that bill in committee for about 10 minutes, and it was an early lesson for me, and I'm sure Dan's had this more than I have, because he's been there another 2 years. But I fully thought that if I could just give them all the reasons not to vote for 1339, then they would of course listen to my reason. They had, their arguments were pathetic, honestly. The main justification on the floor, well, in the committee, the main justification was the public doesn't like the Electoral College. The public prefers the popular vote. Well, we had to, you know, remind people that we weren't getting, this bill does not get rid of the Electoral College. And it only basically says that our electors will be granted to the winner of the national popular vote. But that did not seem to sway, that argument did not seem to sway the committee nor the floor of the House. On the House floor, the argument that kept getting made over and over was, I thought, fairly ludicrous. We'll never have to buy a yard sign again. If the idea was that elections will be more competitive, they'll care more about Arkansas, and it was wrong that we had to purchase our own yard signs this year for presidential elections. I shudder to say, you know, if I lived in another, yeah, and Dan stood up and spoke against the Electoral College on the floor, as did I, and I probably went on too long because I'm pretty passionate about that. But we had several issues we tried to inform them about. I mean, the best argument against the Electoral College, which I did make, is if you want the one man, one vote, and you want to ignore the power that we have here in Arkansas, which isn't much, but you want to make it even less, then let's go with a direct popular vote. I didn't want to make their arguments for them, but I did point out that we would be losing power, and I didn't see how anyone could vote to reduce the power we have as a state. Someone, my counterpart from the other side of the aisle, I guess as we'd say if we were Washington, said, what was the argument? Oh, how much things have changed since the framers.
That's right, things change.
Things change, and we should move on and get past the Electoral College. Right, and I said, well, you know, those framers did a couple of other handy things like separation of powers and federalism and checks and balances, and he didn't really have a comeback to that, did he? So, anyway, that was a valiant argument that they tried to end early, and it didn't do us much good. What was the vote of that? 56-43? 56-43. So.
And you know, the founders had slaves, so the Constitution really.
Yeah, because women, they made the argument, because there was slavery and because women couldn't vote, then basically that invalidated anything the framers evidently thought, which included the Electoral College, should invalidate the Electoral College.
Has the Senate passed it yet?
No, they have not. And, well, we hear that it's going to have a tough time out, but, you know, I think there's just one vote. I mean, it's hinging on if one person changes their mind, and if it gets to the Senate floor, they think it'll pass. And what we would be doing let me just take a moment. What we would be doing if it passes, we are not voting to do away with the Electoral College. That takes a constitutional amendment, point which I also made, but it agrees to bind us to an interstate compact. When we get 22 states signing the compact, then we agree. At that point, we will then give our electoral votes to the winner of the national popular vote. And that has not happened yet. I think I've heard 4 and I've heard 8 states have approved it. So we're a good ways away from 22 kicking in. And there might very well be another legislative session to undo it, but that's going to be pretty difficult. I mean, you just don't want it. You don't want to have to undo something. You don't want it to pass in the first place.
Is there any path to legal challenge if by some bizarre chance that goes through?
Well, see, the Constitution gives the states the power to allocate their electoral vote as they see fit. So the state legislature gets to choose the method by which we allocate.
I would say that if it passes, and I think the rule is that if the states that join the compact require 270 electoral votes, then it goes into effect. Is that the
right? It's the 22, I think.
Right. I mean, I would predict that, you know, if that happens, you know, they get enough states to encompass 270 electoral votes, you know, this gigantic lawsuit, very similar to Bush versus Gore, and very similar to its effects on the country. So there will be some legal challenge, but, you know, nobody knows what the effects will be.
Some have argued that the compact itself would have to be approved by Congress, because any interstate compact that affects the national powers, congressional powers.
In other words, taking what happened in Florida, just spreading it out all over the country.
But it could be that Congress might save us, but if they're Democratic majorities, they're probably not interested in saving the electoral college.